good evening, and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, broadcasting live from beautiful Cape May, New Jersey via SHR Media. And my guests today are, you know him, you love him, cybersecurity expert Mike Fitzpatrick is back here on Money Talk with Melanie to talk to us about convenience or security, which matters more. I'm very excited to talk to him today about that. That's what's going on in our first hour. And I should mention that Mike Fitzpatrick is is not only a cybersecurity expert, but founder and CEO of NCX Group Securities. And in hour two, we are going to have Mary Abbajay. She's the president and CEO of Careerstone Group, and she's going to talk to us about managing up and how to deal with difficult bosses. Who of us that have been in the workforce for any amount of time have not had to deal with a difficult boss or 2 or 3 or 12? So I'm excited to talk to her as well. And welcome everybody in the Facey chat. Hello. Hey, Miss Kira Ennis. Hey, Sackhead Sean. How are you? Hi, Doug. I hope everybody is doing well and enjoying their the start to their weekend. It's Friday. Yeah, that's my vibe today. It's time to get down on Friday. Hey, Keith Little. Hello. Welcome, Dwight. I hope everybody's... Yeah, Sackhead Sean is one of the difficult bosses that I'm talking about. In fact, that was the inspiration behind Mary Abbajay coming on the show, was because Sackhead Sean is just such a slave driver. Dun, dun, dun. I'm totally politically inappropriate today. And welcome, Ron Edwards, to the Facey chat. Hello. I hope you are well, Ron Edwards. Brand new Ron Edwards notebook during the break today. Very excited about that. I never listened to a Ron Edwards notebook before I play it live on the air. First of all, I'm not to mention, any particular, any particular radio host that may or may not keep the language pristine and clean. Sackhead Sean, my but I know with Ron Edwards' notebook that I can play it without listening to it first, and it will be perfectly clean. Plus, I like for you all who are watching via Facebook Live to see the expression on my face. To see the expressions on my face as I'm listening to whatever Ron Edwards has to say. It's always very, very deep. And sometimes I agree and sometimes I don't. It just really depends. And I will certainly let him know. one way or the other. Everyone knows Sackheads is dangerous. Yes, this is true. You all are a dangerous bunch. Well, the stock market is back up like 350 points. I was so busy yesterday that I have no idea what the market did yesterday. And so busy today, I didn't check to see what the market did yesterday. But it was up by about 350 points today. You can pull... see, my boss is clowning me in the Facey chat. He said he's going to pull the tapes from my appearance on Sackheads. I can assure you that I did not use any bad language. I have way too many political enemies to use bad language on tape. I wanted to correct that before the lightning, came out of the sky. Yes, Ron is very afraid when I let him know that I did not appreciate his notebook that particular week. I did not agree with whatever sentiment he had on his notebook. That week. And Sackhead Sean, if you do possess any tapes where I'm incorrect on that assertion, I'm sure that there's something we could work out so that we could, make sure that those tapes disappear. Just saying. But I'm pretty sure that I'm right about that because my mentors are very, very, they're constantly watching and looking and making sure that I'm behaving myself, even though, I'm nearly 50 years old. You'd be surprised. And I am grateful, actually, for the number of people who care enough to let me know when I'm messing up. So that's a good thing. But it's MLK weekend. MLK. Hey, Keith Houchin is in the house. Hey, if you want to have a good time, I don't know if he has any room. Speaking of intelligent musings, I don't know how many friend spaces Keith Houchin has left on his Facebook page, but there's a guy who has some very intelligent musings about the political scenes on a regular basis. Second, Sean is single-handedly, he's my boss and is single-handedly in the Facebook chat ruining my political career such that it is. Thank you for that, Second, Sean. That's great. Yes, anyhow, the stock market is back up 350 points. And a lot of people are looking around going, how in the world is this possible? Well, it's a couple of reasons. You got the UK just totally messing up their economy, not getting Brexit nailed down. I'm glad I'm making the boss man laugh. Yes, I'm nearly 50, Ron Edwards. I'm 48 years old. I'll be 50 in soon, in 2 years. I teach math. So, 2 years. Yeah. In 2 years, I'll be 50. I'm 48. So Brexit is hopefully finally going to get straightened out, but it should have been straightened out a long time ago. Therefore, people are dumping money into our market here in the U.S. China has agreed to 6 more years of buying our goods. That's always a good thing. So that helped the market out a great deal. There's rumors that they're on their way to settling, well, maybe not settling, but being amicable about the trade deal. I guess that's the best way I can put it, in China. But China's economy is not doing very well as a result of the strains on a trade deal, our trade relations. So therefore, again, another reason for people to put money into America's market. And you would think with the temporary shutdown that our market would not be doing as well. Now, I know I cannot let this period, my opening, go before I mention what President Trump did to Nancy Pelosi yesterday. I mean, I would be completely remiss. And those of you who have been following me for a while know how I feel about how petty our president can be. And that I tend to be prissy and I like things to be appropriately done. And I don't like when people are mean. I think you should be nice and you should play nice and you should be presidential and that things should be done correctly. But in this particular case, I have to keep it real with you all. In this particular case, I laughed my head off because it was hilarious. And quite frankly, they had a lot of nerve trying to travel when, some 800,000 people are not getting paid. And they have not settled this situation with the wall. And she's talking about only giving him $1. And I'm talking about Speaker Pelosi. And she's not willing to do any negotiating whatsoever. That's ridiculous. And not to mention, speaking of petty, why don't you just write up, like, what is he, a secretary now? Like, he's not POTUS, he's not the president of the United States. Why don't you just write up your State of the Union and leave it on my desk? It's essentially what she told him, instead of doing it on national TV as is the tradition. So, I mean, not that she started it is ever. Of course, any of my students will tell you that you're responsible for our own actions, and it doesn't matter who started it, et cetera, et cetera. But the part of me, the petty part of me, the part of me that I try to correct, the part of me that I try to keep in check, the part of me, the reason why Jesus came, that part. Hey, Cher, that part was laughing her head off because that was hilarious. Now, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but it was funny. I didn't want to laugh, but I have to be honest. That was funny. And they had, and frankly, they had a lot of, I wanted to thank the troops. Did you? And so I can't remember what I was watching yesterday, but someone said, somebody asked a question. I think it was my boy Tucker. Like, why did she have to go there? Like, what did she have to do with foreign policy that she had to go there? Like, it was a PR trip, exactly like President Trump said. So you didn't have to go. And if you're going, don't use my plane. Period. It's the kind of thing, and I posted this on my Facebook page. Cher in the Facebook chat said, I haven't laughed that hard in years. And the memes, here's the other thing about President Trump. I'm not going to lie. As soon as that happened, as a techie person and as someone who's on social media a lot, one of the first things I thought was, the memes are going to be fire. The memes are going to be hilarious. And the internet did not disappoint. Hilarious. Okay, you're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. You are listening. Let's work on our diction. You are listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. I will be right back in a couple of minutes with Mike Fitzpatrick, cybersecurity expert and CEO of NCX Group. Coming your way is a brand new Ron Edwards notebook. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
When you go to work and refuse to do your job, you get fired. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. On today's page from the Edwards Notebook, congressional members are voted into office to represent our interests, which includes safety. Due to ongoing illegal border crossings, 90% of the heroin coming into America at the southern border, human trafficking, etc., our republic is under tremendous strain. Sovereign Americans are regularly murdered, raped, cut up, and run over with automobiles driven by illegal border crossers who literally have no business being in our republic. President Trump has tried until he tried out to get Democrats to work with him on a deal to properly secure our borders. But the problem is congressional Democrats do not want a deal. Thus, so far, not even a compromise can be reached that would include physical barriers in vast areas that remain wide open for disrespectful illegals to simply stroll into their favorite sanctuary city and wreak havoc. Thus, President Trump must hold the line and not cave into those in Congress who should now be fired. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us and 12 a.m. Sundays on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
What are the two most effective English words? Thank you. Just hearing them makes me warm inside. John Campbell makes it easier for you to spread the love. In a cordial way, of course. With John Campbell Biz Social Personal Touch, send thank you cards to your grandparents, boss, or business partners. Our campaign store has pre-made templates and 5-touch campaigns specific to a number of industries to add a personal touch to any business communication. Want to make someone feel all warm inside? Think of John Campbell Biz Social Personal Touch at www.sendoutcards.com/personal touch.
Right now, you can get the credit you deserve. Just visit MrCreditRepair.biz. Let their expert credit repair specialists remove late payments, charge-offs, collections, even old bankruptcies fast and easy. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Why go anyplace else? Increase your credit score today. At Mr. Credit, you always get a quality service, all at our everyday discounted price. Stop getting turned down for cars, credit cards, or even new homes. Visit MrCreditRepair.biz today. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Your credit repair is our number one priority.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school. And if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. So glad to have you with me this evening. And speaking of glad to be here this evening, I am so glad that I have Mike Fitzpatrick, CEO of NCX Group, and our Money Talk with Melanie official cybersecurity expert with me this evening. How are you, darling?
I'm doing so much better that I'm talking to you. I've been waiting almost the whole start of this first part of the year to talk to you.
It's true.
How are you?
It's true. It's true. I'm so excited, and I love that. I love that the topic that we picked this time happened so organically. It's the thing that we argue about every month.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, and it's the thing that I preach to companies all the time, right? When you're talking about security, the basic premise is it more convenient or is security more important? Which is more important to you at the end of the day? And that's kind of the choice everybody is being asked to make now.
It's true. It's very true. And, you know, here's the thing. In my opinion, privacy is kind of gone by the wayside anyway. And I was doing some research for the show, and that seems to be the prevailing thought. I mean, every couple of weeks there's breaches that happen, and people are, I wanted to know, is this really a problem when you and I talked about it? And I did some research, and it really is. I mean, there are tons of articles written about how people just really would just really rather have the convenience is what it came down to. And I would say that I'm in that camp. I mean, it's the same reason why, this is kind of like horrible to compare it to, but if you think about it, it's the same reason why, STIs and STDs are rampant in some areas. Like, it's a matter of risk. Risk versus convenience and pleasure. It's a matter of risk. People take chances that they shouldn't. And I'm that way with my technology, and I'm not the only one, apparently.
Well, it's one of these things where people don't think through a lot of the decisions they make these days in a lot of aspects of their life. And internet practice is one of those things. I mean, good night. I mean, using your laptop or your mobile device in a Starbucks or a coffee shop and using their Wi-Fi today is akin to going to a disco in the late 70s. You're going to catch something just by being there.
So the internet cafe is the Studio 54 of the internet? Is that what you're saying?
You're going to come away with something, Melanie.
You're definitely going to catch something, for sure. And it's true. And I mean, they warn you, but what do we all do? Well, not what do we all do, but what do many of us do? Now, when in those situations, I do use my hotspot. I don't use internet unless, I have to.
Well, let's ask a question for the Facey chat.
Yeah.
Let's ask a question for the Facey chat. Now, when you were traveling this holiday season, did you use your hotspot on your phone, or did you use the internet provided by the hotel?
Oh, I used the hotel internet. I did. And that's not awesome. It's not. And I was in New York City the last time I traveled. That was like 2 weeks ago.
Now, see, I can tell you as a professional hacker that in a hotel room with the right tools and using the guest internet, you can capture everything that's being transacted.
But you would be so bored. Okay, well, I guess except for my financial stuff. Let's
say you decide to go to your bank account. I can capture that. If you decide to pay a bill, I can capture that. It all gets dealt with before it gets encrypted.
Right. Very. Yeah. You're right. Of course, you're right. That's why you're the expert. So how do we? Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, so I mean, you can sit there and what was it? The Marriott breach a couple of months ago. And it's like, okay, no one's talking about the fact that you can take a Raspberry Pi, a friend of mine built this, it's a little device, plug it into the hotel in one of the conference rooms with a Ethernet cable, plug in, and it will sit there and capture everything that's going on in the building. So, you have to think about your surroundings. I mean, it's like walking down a dark street at night, right? You got to think about your surroundings and keep your head on a swivel with what's going on. Internet security is that way too. And you have to decide whether something's more important to you from a convenience perspective, or is security more important to you in that particular instance.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So just like if I'm walking down the street in New York City at 1 a.m. and I'm super careful, there's certain things that you have to do when you're in the city. Well, that you really should do anywhere. I mean, I live in a rural area, but because I'm originally from Philly, my mom always says, you don't live on the moon. Like, just because we live in a quote-unquote safe neighborhood doesn't mean you live on the moon. So I use the same protocols living in my safe neighborhood as I use living in Philly. So, or living in Atlantic City, or when I'm in New York City.
So I know my wife, when she's gone to get groceries and it may be at night or something like that, she'll walk with her car keys in between her fingers.
Yep.
Just in case.
Yep.
Right? So she'll do that. So when you're walking down that dark street, which is more important to you? Is it convenience with that shortcut, or is it your security getting down that street safely?
It's definitely your security. I think that people view internet hacking as fairly rare and out of our control. At least that's the way I look at it. And I'm probably wrong.
Well, it's one of these things that when you think that you've given your information to a company that you think that they're going to take care of your personal information, and you take it for granted that they just do that, you're making a bad mistake.
Okay.
There isn't. So let's talk about a credit card transaction, because we're all used to the internet and buying something, especially you with Alexa. So anyway,
hey.
So you got your window that comes up, and you got the little lock on the browser that says it's encrypted and all of that. Well, the credit card transaction is encrypted, but 9 times out of 10, that back-end database, that back-end SQL database, is not. So if I'm a hacker and I get to that database, I still get your information. I may not get a credit card, but I get enough to build an identity.
That's true. Now, that has happened to me. That happened to me in D.C. That did happen to me in D.C. And what happened was my account ended up getting frozen. And I don't even know at what point where it happened. And, I traveled from New Jersey to D.C. I went to the Bible. It was actually a weekend. I went to the Bible Museum, a day trip. I went to the Bible Museum. I didn't know when I was going to come back. So, and I Uber everywhere when I'm in the city, when I'm in D.C. I got to D.C. Right. I went to go Uber to the next place, and my bank account was locked because somebody had hacked into my account, which I totally forgot about, actually, till just now. And that happened like maybe last year. And it's not the first time. But my bank caught it. My bank caught it before any real damage was done.
Well, and the financial fraud technology is getting really predictive these days. I mean, it's interesting how that's working and trying to prevent fraud. It used to be, there was a high percentage of fraud that could be committed with credit cards. And now with the banks and the technology that they're using, that has gone from 60, 70%, 80% fraud possibility down to 10 or 15% fraud possibility now with credit cards. It's really changed drastically. You had this large email dump with this breach yesterday, or number of breaches. The information was dropped on the dark net. 773 million IDs.
Whoa!
So that happened. That was sent out yesterday. If you want to have some fun, I'm posting this link on the Facey chat here. If you want to, you can go in and type in your email address, and it's basically "Have I been owned?" And it'll tell you whether or not you have. So you might want to go check it. If you need to change your passwords, change your passwords. Go to a harder password, something creative with different characters in it. If you're not using a password vault, these days, you probably should. Something like Password One or something along those lines, to take simple passwords, make them complex, and be able to use those with different sites. to secure your information.
But Michael.
What?
Know how many things we have passwords for? You know how many? You know what the problem is. You know how many things we have passwords for? Everything.
So here's a question for the room, Melanie, and that is, how many of you are using the same password on multiple things?
I am, and then I, of course, teach my kids in Introduction to Computers that's horrible and you shouldn't do it. That's why if you can't do, you teach. I, of course, teach my students better than I do, which is I taught them what you just said because I'm a good parent and I'm a good teacher. Use unique passwords for every site, blah, blah, blah. Like, I know, but Michael, how? Now, if you use one of those password site things, right, can you still use, like, one password and then it uses the unique password? Like, is that, aren't there apps that will do that for you?
Well, yeah, one password, you could take a relatively weak password or something middle of the road and strengthen it by using something like 1Password. It'll generate a password that's tied to your 1Password inside the app. So there are technologies out there that can do this, that can help you maintain your passwords across all platforms. 1Password is one that comes to mind, and several people I know use it and love it.
Because, I mean, how can, and I know people who follow the rule that you're supposed to follow. Now, I know one person who does it, but then, like, they write all their passwords down on a piece of paper. I'm like, well, that's worthless. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, why are you writing down your passwords? Are you insane? What's wrong with you?
My favorite in the early days was always the guy that took a sticky note with his password next to the computer.
Right.
That was always my favorite. But the one that really jumped out at me with that was, remember a year ago, I guess it was, in Hawaii, where they had the false nuclear attack?
Yes.
Well, I guess they were in the operations center, and there's video of the dude who hit the broadcast of his computer and his screen, and next to his screen was his password. And it was broadcast everywhere.
I remember that.
I love that stuff.
Well, remember how I think it was John Podesta or Hillary Clinton's email got hacked? Their password was like password 123. Like,
executives are the worst.
Yeah. Seriously? Although it does come to bring to mind one of my passwords, but I don't really care about that password. And I didn't make it up. What are they going to do? Hack in and steal lesson plans? I don't care. Go enjoy yourself.
Well, it could be one of those crafty students of yours that goes in and changes grades. I don't know.
Oh, well, no. You know what they do? I can't believe I didn't mention this. A kid told me yesterday at lunch, I was on lunch duty, and I have one kid who hates my class, my computers class. She's like, I hate computers. I don't know how to do computers. And I'm like, well, that's why you're in class. And then another kid at the table was like, I love computers. That's how I learned to make my report cards. I'm not even kidding. And I caught a girl making her report card one day. I'm like, are you serious? Are you seriously in my class making a new report card? Like, how? What? Like, kids are bold.
That's what Photoshop's for.
I mean, I know. And it's not like I wasn't crafty and shifty and shady when I was a teenager. We all were to some degree. But you're like, what do you think's going to happen at the end of the school year when you don't pass? Like, they are so short-sighted. I'm just like, you can't just fail and like there's going to be no repercussions. Like, you're making your own report card. That's fraud. Like, that's just not good on so many levels. But yeah, and then, they said that to a teacher. Like, who says that to a teacher? I love my computer class. That's how I made all my report cards. Wonderful. That was completely my intent. I'm so glad that I taught you the skill to, defraud your parents. I can't. Like, and this is the problem. Like, how do you even, they don't even need to hack it. They don't need to do it for real. They just go ahead and duplicate there. And this is the thing. So one of the kids said, well, what about the watermark? That's how schools are supposed to secure their report cards, right? What about the watermark?
Yep.
And he said, my parents don't know what a watermark is. And I was like, exactly. And that's exactly the problem. Parents have no idea.
Well, and the problem is the watermark now is down to a pixel from a security standpoint. So, okay, parents are going to see that. It's a pixel. So you've got, that takes us in a different direction with deep fakes and what you're going to be able to do with AI. And, as far as photoshopping things, changing video, using fake voice or using special voice tools to change and create fake videos in the not too distant future.
Oh, now that's super scary. I mean, that just is. That's super scary. And
it's called deep fakes.
What does that mean, deep fakes?
Well, okay, so what it uses is artificial intelligence. It combines it with morphing and different types of video technologies and audio technologies to create something that looks real, looks absolutely real, but is 100% fake.
Like Kim Kardashian's butt? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. That was the total...
What's that?
I said like Kim Kardashian's butt. I'm sorry, that was completely inappropriate.
Well, here, let me. I'll while we're talking here, I'll find one and post it in Facey Chat. There's one that I saw recently with Obama.
Oh, so is the purpose of this, or one of the uses of this, to create fake news and make it look real?
Yes.
Well, that's frightening.
That is the purpose of deep fakes. Is it creates things that look absolutely real but are not. So I just posted in that in the face chat there. It's quite creative.
Now, now what I'm thinking, the first thing that pops into my head is like being accused of a crime you didn't commit or something like that.
Correct.
So does it take someone like you, like what if you're on video and somebody has framed you, some, wacko, like I'm totally envisioning some episode of Law and Order Criminal Intent where some wacko does this to frame someone they hate and the person ends up getting locked up. Does it take someone like you to detect whether or not it's a fake? Like, would the average police department or prosecutor or public defender be able to ascertain that that's what this was?
But see, now you're getting you're going down a road which is one that we're all going to have to transverse with AI here pretty quick, and that is video surveillance cameras. We trust what we see on video as being absolute truth in any particular type of situation, from the commission of a crime to somebody knocking at my door on a Ring doorbell, those kinds of things. We trust that video. Well, we're getting to the point with AI and video special effects where all of those things can be altered, look to be absolutely real, but still be 100% fake. And so...
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
No, I'm just thinking, so do you mean, can this only be transferred via some type of video or computer, or is this like a virtual reality type situation?
Oh, it could be a virtual reality, augmented reality. It starts to get into chain of custody and evidence. And if you don't have watermarks in the evidence that's collected, or the photographs or the video of things that are collected, how do you know if it's actually been secured or 100% true?
Okay, that's frightening. And I don't know if you saw this comment from Levon Wilson in the Facey chat, who's in the Army, but he says the U.S. Army psychological warfare use it. That would not surprise me one bit.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely believe that.
Because this kind of technology, my guess is, before it hits the mainstream and is marketable to, Joe Q. Public or John Q. Public, the government probably has it first. I mean, that's how we got the internet, right? That's how we got the internet.
Yeah, there's some that say that we're 30 years behind the technology that the government actually uses. The stuff that we have on the consumer side of things, we're at least 30 years behind. Right,
exactly. So if they could just go ahead and reveal that meal making thing on Star Trek and the transporter thing, help us if they're out. I'm busy.
I want the Jetsons replicator. That's what I want. And flying cars. I've already told my wife, I don't care when the flying car gets perfected. I'm taking every bit of money we have and I'm buying a flying car.
Well, it's a good thing your son is in school already.
I said, I don't even want to hear a no on it. I'm buying a flying car.
That is frightening, but it's very true. And I've heard, like, if you see the technology in the movies, chances are, the government already has it or has had it for quite some time.
Well, it's interesting. I remember 20 years ago, a guy that was in naval intelligence telling me, "You got a webcam on your computer?" I said, "Yeah." Well, you're going to want to cover that up because they can turn that on remotely at any time. So it is what it is, right? So, yes, those things are true, and those are the things that we're seeing. And, the technology is getting very good, and it's going to be really hard to tell fact from fiction.
That is frightening. There were movies and continue to be movies about this. For years, the Todd Kittner in the Facey chat says that his uncle was in naval intelligence, and he said the same thing, that the technology we think we have, the government has had for years. Like that we are like, oh, do we have it or don't we? The government has had it. Like, definitely has it. That scares me.
Go back and watch, and I want to say it's from 20 years ago now, Will Smith's movie, Enemy of the State.
Yes.
Go back and watch that today.
What about Minority Report? Remember that with Tom Cruise when they were preemptively arresting people for stuff for crimes that they were about to commit?
Yeah, well, I don't know that we're that far away with it, as far as AI grows and gets more powerful. Yeah, you could make that predictive analysis.
See, you need to not say things like that. I'm gonna need you to not, because when you say things like that, that makes it seem like it's really super real. Levon in the Facey chat says, ask him, will AI dictate firewalls are upgraded, and will biometric be replicated itself due to AI? Okay, that he's a cyber security person, and you are. I have no idea what he just said. Maybe you do.
All right. So the question I have for him is this: think about AI and AI running an attack, and then living inside, bypassing your firewall, and then living inside your network, and you not being able to do a thing about it.
And it acting on your behalf?
Or acting against you.
Okay. All right. Time to take a break. You're listening to All right, we need to talk about how to protect ourselves now. I'm feeling like super vulnerable right now. So on the other side of this break, that's exactly what we're going to do. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. We have Mike Fitzpatrick on. He's a cybersecurity expert and the CEO of NCX Group, and has succeeded in scaring the heck out of me and probably the rest of my audience.
Yay!
He's like, finally! And we're talking about why many of us care about our convenience more than we care about our own privacy and security. But that has changed thanks to Michael. So we'll be back in a few moments.
Right now, you can get the credit you deserve. Just visit MrCreditRepair.biz. Let their expert credit repair specialists remove late payments, charge-offs, collections, even old bankruptcies fast and easy. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Why go anyplace else? Increase your credit score today. At Mr. Credit, you always get a quality service, all at our everyday discounted price. Stop getting turned down for cars, credit cards, or even new homes. Visit MrCreditRepair.biz today. That's MrCreditRepair.biz. Your credit repair is our number one priority.
What are the two most effective English words? Thank you. Just hearing them makes me warm inside. John Campbell makes it easier for you to spread the love. In a cordial way, of course. With John Campbell's Biz Social Personal Touch, send thank you cards to your grandparents, boss, or business partners. Our campaign store has pre-made templates and 5-touch campaigns specific to a number of industries to add a personal touch to any business communication. Want to make someone feel all warm inside? Think of John Campbell Biz Social Personal Touch at www.sendoutcards.com/personal touch.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school. And if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
And we're back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. And for this first hour, we are on with Michael Fitzpatrick. He's a cybersecurity expert and the founder of founder and CEO of NCX Group. And he's talking to us about convenience or security, which matters more. And he's been doing an excellent job helping us to appreciate that we should be more concerned about our security than the convenience of being sloppy with our privacy. I think that is the point that we've come to, that you drove home pretty ably in the last few minutes, Mike.
Well, and Melanie, it comes down to a couple of things, right? I mean, you want to go through and you want to check the privacy of your home router, for example, because we all tie our Ring doorbells and our internet access for our TVs or Apple TV and things like that into our Wi-Fi networks in the house. Well, okay, so is your password on your Wi-Fi router, is that strong, or can somebody like Mike drive up and down your neighborhood, break your password, and gain access to the cameras that might be in your house?
Or is it the same password that you use for everything else?
Bingo.
Yeah, that's not good. Isn't it? Yeah, that's not good. So are there? I feel like I know what the answer to this question is going to be, but is there anything that we should secure more? Like, I think like your router might be one of those things. Your bank account, right? But what I hear you saying is like, it doesn't matter if you're, for example, like if your router isn't properly protected, and you're accessing your bank account from home, it doesn't matter if you have a strong bank number, if your router password is weak, and vice versa.
Correct. So the reality is you have to think about and go through and evaluate the technology that you've connected yourselves to. This is not going to get better with 5G. This is going to get worse with 5G technology coming out. One of the things that I found interesting, I guess probably about 7-8 years ago, the big thing was going to be IP6, a new IP addressing scheme that they were coming out with. One of the conference speakers at this particular event at DEF CON that particular year was the head of NATO cybersecurity. And it was interesting to me because he went through and was talking about vulnerability studies and those kinds of things. And that's the type of work we do, our vulnerability assessments and security assessments for clients. And so I was curious to see kind of how he ranked vulnerabilities. The number one vulnerability with our corporate clients is protecting intellectual property, protecting their crown jewels. Well, the number one priority or vulnerability for the government, like NATO, the United States government, and other governments, their number one threat is anonymity, not knowing who each of us are. And so they not being able to know who you are, whether you're friend or foe, is a big risk. Well, 5G is going to give them that information. They tried to do it through IP6, but 5G is going to give them that information of who we are. So there's going to be more identifiable information on each of us floating out there in the ether through Internet of Things, through 5G, the new cell stuff. And all we know is, hey, it's faster, man, this is cool. But there's also trade-offs that come with this. And you have to balance it out in order to protect yourself, to have privacy of any kind within your life and with your family.
Okay. So here's the rub. When you say that, you mean the technology companies or the government or both are going to have this information, right?
Yes, all the above.
Okay, so on the one hand, I'm thinking, okay, as a person who's not doing anything wrong and who is not a danger to others and that kind of thing, anonymity would be a great thing for me to protect myself. On the other hand, the crazy person who, is still interested in the caliphate, I'm going to call them crazy, who still wants, let me put it this way, the religious zealot who still wants a caliphate, right? Who wants anonymity. Like, I want the government to know as much as possible about that person. I don't want that person to be invisible to the government. So, like, how do you balance that? How in the world do you balance the government's need to know these things to protect us and our need to have them not know to protect ourselves? Like, how in the world do you find a balance there?
It's a legitimate question, and I'm not sure that I would even begin to have an answer for that. I mean, you've got, the protections in the Constitution that no one seems to pay any attention to in the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendments of the Constitution. No one really seems to pay too much attention to that. I have corporate clients that at one point in time were calling going, how do I protect my information from the federal government spying on me?
Right.
So we've had those discussions with clients.
Well, and look, I mean, if you're paying any attention to the political climate, the government has spied on innocent citizens, and no one has really done anything about it. I mean,
well, how about the reporter? I think it's either. I think her name's Sarah Carter or this other woman that was at CBS News that actually walked in and found her computer being accessed by the NSA.
Wow. That's insane.
So the surveillance is, it's real. It does go on, and now, it's easier to track people and their movements with location services on their phones. So again, we make choices for convenience over security. And in some cases, it may be the other way. Should be the other way.
Well, you're exactly right. I mean, for example, as a single woman who I travel by myself pretty often. I keep my location services on because I want people to know where I am. But that's the same reason why you should keep it off sometimes, because people will know where you are. Like how do you win that? That's an unwinnable situation. But if I were, you know what I mean? Like on the one hand, the services are on, so if somebody wanted to be waiting for me to abduct me, they could, right? On the other hand, if I'm abducted and the police want to find me, what's the first thing they're going to look for? The location services to see where my phone is. So,
without a doubt, and I mean, Melanie, we have some celebrity clients, and I would not want to be a celebrity in this day and age whatsoever. They have to be on social media. They have to use their mobile devices to promote themselves, their brands, their images, their newest movie that's coming out, all of those things. So, but at the same time, if I'm a bad guy and I know there's a celebrity event going on, I might use something like Stingray to capture every mobile device within a mile of that event until I figured out which one was that particular celebrity's phone, and that way I can then stalk them.
That's frightening. That's scary. And of course, you and I talked about the student situation that I had, which was relatively minor, but I had a student who took a picture of me in class, which is perfectly legal because I'm a public employee, used that to search other pictures of me, and it was scary. It was a very scary thing. And, he had hacked into the schools, overrode the school security system. And this was a kid. Yep. So it's a scary thing. Oh, my goodness. We only have 2 minutes left for the close of the show. How can they get in touch with you if they want to use your services? Your phone's going to be ringing off the hook now.
Well, the easiest way to get in touch with us is through the website, www.ncxgroup.com, and that's www.ncxgroup.com. Thank
you so much again for being on the show. I want to say it was lovely talking to you, but it wasn't all that nice this time. I'm just
watch that deep faked video. It'll make you cringe a little bit.
Oh my goodness! I'm going to watch it when I get off the air. Thank you so much. You did a great job as usual, darling. Have a great weekend.
You too. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. That was Mike Fitzpatrick, cybersecurity expert, founder and CEO of NCX Group, NCX Group Security. And he was just talking to us about the convenience of security, which matters more. If you missed that part of the show, you definitely want to go back and listen to that when I post the podcast. It was eye-opening. My goodness. The second hour we have coming up, Mary Abbajay. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She will tell me if I'm not. She's the president and CEO of Careerstone Group, LLC, and she's going to talk to us about how to deal with bad bosses. And I don't know about you, but I've had a couple of bad bosses or two in my career, and she's going to tell us how to deal with that. So I'm excited to talk to her. The next hour, we are going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are you joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on shrmedia.com.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunnett. Tune in every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunnett.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
New show on the SHR Media Network, Seconds Against Tyranny. On shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. Live and direct on the SHR Media Network. shrmedia.com. Be there. For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy, and catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's no surrender ever, because truth is not always pleasant.
We love the Unpleasant Blonde Guy here on Money Talk with Melanie. That is my boy. And he's not unpleasant at all, actually. He's actually a very nice guy. The Unpleasant Blonde Guy, Dave Milner. If you do not listen to his commentary, treat yourself and look up the Unpleasant Blonde Guy on Spreaker. He's really fantastic. I want to give a shout out quickly to my sponsors and thank them so much for sponsoring the Money Talk with Melanie show. John Campbell at Biz Social Personal Touch, Eva Rosenberg, aka the Tax Mama at taxmama.com, and Robert Houston at creditrepair.biz. Thank you, gang, for supporting Money Talk with Melanie. I do appreciate it so very much. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first hour of Money Talk with Melanie. I don't know if I should put enjoyed in air quotes, but it was very informative, if nothing else. Mike Fitzpatrick really told us a lot about our privacy, our cyber privacy, and why we should be concerned about it, and why we should really be more careful and stop playing fast and loose with our cybersecurity. And next up, we have, I want to see if I'm pronouncing her name correctly. I have her on the line. Is it Mary Abbajay? I forgot to ask you earlier how to pronounce your last name. before
Hey, Melanie, you got it exactly right. Perfect.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Because that's how I've been pronouncing it for the entire hour. So it would be really embarrassing if it was wrong. Oh, I'm so glad. We're going to talk to her about how to deal with difficult bosses. I'm really looking forward to that. Before I bring her on, I just want to tell you a bit about her. She's the president of Careerstone Group, LLC, which is a woman-owned full-service organization and professional development company in Washington, D.C., my second home, between D.C. and New York. She has 20 years experience in leadership positions and has founded several successful businesses in Washington, including Careerstone Group, the Toledo Lounge, and Crush Nightclub. Mary currently serves on the Market President's Board of BB&T Bank and is past chairman of the Board for Leadership Greater Washington, where she also chaired and led the Adult Signature Program, the Youth Leadership Program, and the Rising Leaders Program. She was a volunteer mentor for Mentors, Inc., an urban youth mentoring program, and served for 6 years on the board of directors of the Woolly Mammoth Theater and was president of the Adams Morgan Business Association. I'm very excited to have her on the show today. Without further ado, the one and only Mary Abbajay. How are you today?
Hey, Melanie, I'm great. I'm doing well. I'm actually in Chicago waiting for a big snowstorm to hit.
Oh, wow.
I'm in D.C.
I hope you don't get stuck there.
Oh, I'm already stuck here. They've already canceled my flight for the morning, so it's going to be a couple more days in Chicago. But you know what? You have to be stuck in some city. Chicago ain't too bad. I really like this town. So
oh, good.
We're going to make the most of it.
Good. I've never been. I have to visit. It's definitely on the list. I'm in D.C. rather often because I live in New Jersey and active politically, so I tend to be there. I actually would be there tonight, but I forgot about this event that was happening, and I dropped a ball. Otherwise, that's where I'd be I dropped a ball, and that's where I'd be broadcasting from right now. But I'm so glad to have you on the show. Is there anything that I left out of your bio that you want the audience to know about?
Oh my God, that bio! That was just exhausting, like listening to myself on that bio. Just the fact that I just have the book out. The book recently published. It's called Managing Up: How to Win at Work and Succeed with Any Type of Boss. So that's been like my life for the past 8 months, talking about the book, and it's been really fun and exciting.
I love it. That's fantastic. I definitely want to talk about managing up, but I thought many of us, well, you know what, but both things really, because I have an awful lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show and an awful lot of bosses that listen to the show. And I'm sure a lot of people that have bosses who are absolute nightmares as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So let me ask you, how do you know if you're actually dealing with a bad boss? Sometimes we think a bad boss is somebody that we don't like, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily true.
Well, you know, that you raised an excellent point, Melanie. So there's a whole spectrum of what we call bad bosses, right? Sometimes they're just bad for you because they just operate differently than you. And sometimes they're bad because they're really bad at what they do. And sometimes they're really bad because they're toxic, horrible individuals. So when you think about your boss, the first thing you want to realize is that they're humans, and you want to give them a chance, and you have to recognize what's your contribution to the relationship and what's theirs. Now, so once you have the spectrum, and you figure out where on the spectrum you are with your boss, and that sounds like, crazy spectrum, but then you can decide what to do. But you're absolutely right. The first thing you have to realize is it really that person, or are you just resisting who they are and they're bad for you?
Oh, that's a very good point. And I think it takes probably a level of maturity, emotional maturity, and some experience in the workplace to get to that point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So, what I always tell people when you're thinking about managing up, first thing I tell people when you're thinking about managing up is that it's not about sucking up, right? It's not about being a sycophant. It's not about kissing somebody's butt, unless you work for a narcissist. It's really about, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, it's really about understanding who that person is and managing the relationship. Because in the relationship matters a lot. I think people, especially people who are kind of younger and newer to the workforce, they don't realize how much influence their boss actually has over their career, right? Our bosses have a lot of influence over the types of jobs we get, the types of opportunities, our visibility in the industry, the clients we get to work with. And so that really matters a lot. And so we have to be able to manage that relationship and make it work for us. We need to make it work for them, and we need to make it work for the organization. And so when you look at that, the first thing you really want to do is you want to take a look at who your boss really is. And try not to judge your boss, right? Just notice, are they introvert? Are they extrovert? How do they like to work? And then you have to take a good look at yourself. What are you? How do you like to work? What are your proclivities? What are your preferences? What are your pet peeves? And then when you have, and by the way, you got to be honest with yourself, which, as you know, Melanie, a lot of people have a difficult time doing. And then you have to look at the gap between you and your boss and your work styles and how you like to operate. And then you get to decide what you want to do differently, how you are going to engage with your boss differently, because quite frankly, as much as we wish we could, we can't change other people. And that really is, you are absolutely right, it really does take a level of maturity and self-awareness to be able to do that.
Indeed it does. And I think that the philosophy, if you will, behind how you deal with your supervisors is changing. And I also think it changes depending on who you are and where you are in your career, in your life, as to how you evaluate that. I mean, I've been in education longer than my boss has. So, but I have no desire to be a principal because of of the other things that I do. I'm one of those people that's teaching's great because there's benefits and I'm good at it. But that's not my thing. That's not the thing that I'm doing, if you will. I'm not aspiring to retire as a teacher or as an administrator. So I'm not a threat of any kind, even though I'm in the middle of my PhD. And anyone who looked at my resume would think, oh my goodness, she probably wants to be a principal. No, I don't. I have a whole other thing going on. You know what I mean? So it depends.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying?
And I totally understand, and you're right. Where you are in your career, managing up, will look different. It will look different in different parts of your career. The way you manage up when you're first beginning is very different than when you're in middle management or when you're in top leadership. And what I like about what you said is it's also really important to have a relationship with your boss so they know what your goals are, right? So your boss probably also doesn't feel threatened because you make sure they know that you're not after their job, right? Because if they know who you are and they know what you want, then that can help them help you get what you need, and they can still get what they need without being threatened.
Exactly. And that's, that can be really hard to determine unless, like you said, unless you step back and in a mature way and kind of understand what possibly is going on. And sometimes that just takes time. After you've been in the workforce for a certain amount of time, you can ID that kind of stuff fairly quickly. But
I completely agree.
But when you're younger, at first your feelings are hurt, and you're and all kinds of other stuff is going on because you're young and you're new to dealing with
you're
people.
New, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think when people are young, and I think with the millennial generation, and I love millennials, so I'm not bashing them at all. I love them. I love working with them. And when they're coming to the workforce in this day and age, they're really expecting the adults in the room to take a vested interest in developing them, right? And not every boss is going to be that coachy development kind of boss. And I think that's difficult for millennials because they're not used to having to be the ones that shift their behavior to make the relationship. They're used to a lot of people shifting for them because they've always been the customer in their life, right? They've been the customer in school. They've been the customer really in their family life because parents really did a lot for them. And when you first start to work, you're no longer the customer. You are the service provider. And I think that's a very difficult thing for some people to grasp. And the other thing that I think is difficult, and this, girl, is that the kind of boss you're going to get is going to be a crapshoot, right? Because in America, we don't promote people based on their ability to be good managers, right? We promote them based on their sales ability. You're a good salesperson. Let's make you head of sales. You're a good teacher. Let's make you head of the English department. You're a good artist. Let's make you head of the art department. And so what happens is these are people that get promoted into managership, right, and leadership that have the technical skills of their background, but not necessarily the managerial skills. And so it really is going to be a huge spectrum of people who are good at it and people who are terrible at it. And I think that takes a while for people to realize and not to get bitter and angry when they get a manager who may be a great person, he may be a great salesman like Michael Scott from The Office, but a terrible manager.
Right. Exactly right. Or they might not have organizational skills or
exactly
or social skills, God forbid. I mean, you work with somebody who's really smart. I mean, this happened. I'm a college professor as well, an adjunct professor as well, and you get to work with some really smart people, the heads of the, and I work in computer science, no less. So you get to work with, right. Okay.
Wait. Melanie, are you telling me that engineers don't have great social skills?
Well, now listen. One of my besties is a chemical engineer, and she's tall, thin, and hot, and she's a chemical engineer, and she's very personable. Okay, now to say that
she's one of a kind.
She is a unicorn, like me.
Yeah,
we are both two unicorns that hang out together. Because I'm a brown, nearly 50-year-old African American woman who teaches STEM as an adjunct professor who teaches like discrete math, computer science, and programming. You don't see a lot of me either. So
oh no, you don't. That's great. I love that. I love that you're a unicorn. But you're right. You know, there's a lot of industries. Medicine's another one where people are not. Or lawyers are another one where you're not taught managerial skills or even people skills or emotional intelligence skills in your profession. So either you're a unicorn like you or you're not, and you'll need to learn those. But not everybody even wants to learn them. I was working with a client. It was Department of Treasury, huge department, but someone in there was fabulous at her job, smart numbers, like boom, boom, boom. But nobody liked working with her because she just didn't have the emotional intelligence. And she didn't value it. And that's the other thing that's challenging about the way American businesses work is that a lot of times the only way to get a promotion is through going into the management track, right? And so we see this a lot in government too. So there's no other way to excel in your career other than becoming a manager of people. And some people just don't want to do that, but they want the promotion. So they take the managership and they're not very good at it and they don't want to be good at it, but they want to further their career. So they kind of get caught in a catch-22.
It's true. And then everyone kind of hates that person. And it's a shame because they just don't, right? Because they're probably outside of work, probably an okay person. But you meet these people all the time. And like I say, I've run into it as an adjunct. I've run into it all the time. Like I'm around these very smart people who clearly are never around people. I very rarely, one of the things I like about being an adjunct is you never see your boss. I literally have never met my boss. He hired me based on my resume. Case in point. Okay? He hired me based on my resume. I sent him a resume. Somebody recommended me. I sent him my resume. I'm sure he said she's brown and she's a woman and she teaches computer science. She's been doing it for 5 years. And I sent him my resume and he hired me. I've literally never met the man. So
that's funny.
Right. But we've only emailed. Who hires somebody without even meeting them? He doesn't even bring me in to meet me. You know who does that? Someone who's the head of a computer science department. Because because to him, it's not a diss. It's a case in point. Because to him, what does any of that stuff matter? It's a program, right?
Yeah.
You look at the resume. You get from how do you get from point A to point B? Well, it's all on the resume, just like a program. So why wouldn't she be able to teach this? I don't need to meet her.
Yeah, and and that's right. And they actually, from the resume, you've done it, but how does this person know that your students are even going to like you? So I think that is just a perfect example. And that's how a lot of the world works. They don't actually get into the people development or people management part.
And he doesn't care. That's the thing. It's completely completely irrelevant. I mean, clearly.
And he's also very lucky because he did well by hiring you, so that's a good sign. So maybe he relies on his luckiness.
I hope so, but I just think the whole thing is really funny, and that kind of thing only happens. I shouldn't say only, but happens a lot on a college level. They don't care about a person's personality, how well they interact with kids, none of that. It really is all about do you know your stuff or no? They, for longest time, didn't even care if you had teaching experience. They're like just starting.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy, but that's just another example of what you're saying about your bosses. I would bet a year's salary that my boss is not a teacher, that he's a scientist.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
I bet you're right.
So,
yeah, I bet you're absolutely right.
Right. So he probably, but I'm a teacher. So if he were to come into my classroom, he probably would see some things done quite differently than he does them because he's not a teacher. And he hasn't been trained as a teacher. And like I said, that's not a diss. It's just an example of how that can happen. Somebody said, you know your stuff? You want to be head of a department? By the way, there's people. There's going to be people there.
Yeah, and so, and your boss is an example of what we would call a ghost boss, right? A ghost boss who kind of hires you and then just never engages with you, right? He doesn't meet with you. He doesn't not that you need him to meet with you, but sometimes people do need their boss's involvement in what they do. They do need feedback. They do need more involvement. And sometimes we have ghost bosses, which could be like your boss, which could be both like for you, fine, because you don't need them. But what if you were a young teacher that needed some help? Like, would he be there for you?
Right. Exactly. Well, and here's the thing. They would hire me even if I was a young teacher, as long as I had the credentials, it doesn't even matter that I am a teacher. Like if I was a PhD with 0 teaching experience, they would totally hire you to teach college. I think the reason why I got hired with a master's is because I'm a teacher. Like, I think that evens it out, but it doesn't. Yeah.
You're right. So I did adjunct faculty for a while at George Mason University, which was super fun, and I really liked it. I had a very similar experience than you. Someone recommended me, and they hired me. I didn't meet them, and I was really good at it because that's what I do for a living. I'm a corporate trainer and facilitator. And I remember I used to walk through the halls, like before and after my class, and I would just see teacher after teacher just sitting there like, wah, 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 like no interaction with the students. Like, it's just so, like, I fell asleep just walking by their doors. And I'm wondering, why don't they hire teachers who are more dynamic and engaging? Like, you would be I can tell just by talking with you, you would keep your class engaged and interested. And I think that's really too bad in the whole education profession. They're not actually, especially in the higher education, focusing on the teaching element.
Well, exactly. I'm just starting to see ads for adjuncts with teaching experience, like must have at least 1 year teaching experience or something like that. But that's fairly new. I mean, I taught at another university before this one for 4 years. So, I mean, I have not only teaching experience, but I've also taught on a university level before. But even before that, I didn't have any teaching experience. And my experience has been with other people in my department that they are not teachers. So I tell my students when I meet them, you're lucky because you got yourself a teacher, and teaching's kind of a thing. So, like, it's a thing. There's an actual skill to it. It's a craft. It's an art. Just saying. So, and you may notice that you have brilliant professors here, and they know their content backward and forward, and that's great. But if you don't know how to transfer that knowledge from one person to another, I mean,
it's useless. It's useless. I mean, I agree with you so completely, and I see it over and over and over again, and I just don't understand how people don't hire for the teaching element. It's just like why people don't hire for the managerial element instead for the technical element, because it matters. Like, if you can't transfer the knowledge to somebody, then you should not be a teacher. If you can't help develop and help support people or your employees, get the best out of them, motivate them, then you shouldn't be a manager.
It's very true. It's very true. And so if you aspire to be a manager before you are a manager, is there a way to develop those skills?
Absolutely there is. So what you want to do is remember that managers are responsible really for two things. One, they're responsible for ensuring the work gets done, right? That the resources are used correctly, that organizational priorities are met, that results happen, that task gets done, the organization, whatever it is, meets its goals, etc. So they are responsible for the task. They're also responsible for the people who are doing the task, right? And that's the piece that people don't understand. If you want to be a manager, you have to remember that you are managing people first, things second. And so you've got to learn how to, you have to develop what we call the soft skills. And the soft skills are the hard skills, actually, because they're harder for people to develop, because developing soft skills means you have to be able to be flexible and be adaptive. If you're just going to drive right over people without any regard for what motivates them or what how they operate, then you're not going to be very good at it. It's like you as a teacher. You probably are able to adapt your style given the nature of your students or the nature of the topic, right? So, and that's what managers need to do. You need to be able to adapt so you can bring out the best in everybody. And so if you want to learn how to do that, you start doing that just as a team member, right? Or you start doing it the best way, Melanie, is to learn how to manage up. The same skills you use managing up are the ones that you'll make you a great manager managing down.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes an awful lot of sense.
So because like let's say that, and I'll give you a perfect example. I'm going to talk about a very simple difference that people have. Introversion and extroversion, right? So, and that's about how we get our energy. That's often about how we communicate. And you can see these differences in people. And what happens is when we see people who are different than us in some way, the first thing we do is judge it, right? And we usually judge it like negatively. And we make up a story about why they do it, which is usually a negative story. And we secretly kind of resent that we have to shift. We want people to operate like us, right? So I talk really fast, as you can tell. And I know I should slow down, but secretly, I just wish people would listen quicker, right?
Well, they just should.
Easier,
I can relate because I do that too. I have to slow myself down. But it's very difficult.
But see, I know that.
Especially
so
when you're
let's talk about
excited.
introversion, extroversion. So let's say that you are a raging extrovert, right? And that your boss is an introvert. So chances are, if your boss is an introvert, they're going to be like hiding in their office a lot. They're probably not walking around too much saying, hey, how you doing? How you doing? They're not checking in with you. They're just leaving you alone, right? So if you have a boss like that, then you have to realize that's just the way they operate, and you need to be proactive about reaching out to them, right? So if you're the extrovert, a couple things you want to do is you want to email them, like get in touch with them, schedule time to talk with them. They're going to cancel half those meetings, but you'll still have the other half. And don't take it personally if they're not warm and fuzzy. Right? And when you meet with the introverts, you got to make sure that you're not overly extroverting because it will drain their energy. So this is about adapting, right? To find a way that you can communicate and collaborate with your boss in a way that's going to work for her, right? And work for you. So it's going to take a little bit of adjusting. But people resist doing that because we don't want to take the effort to do something differently.
That's very true because after all, my way is the right way and the only way.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's really the correct way when you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. We all feel that way. We all feel the way we operate is the best way. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. Right?
Of course. But then when you get a little bit of maturity and, frankly, get burned a few times and realize that may not be the case.
Yeah.
Then you
or that.
Good.
It may not be the case, or it may not just be the case all the time, right? So sometimes the way we operate is the right way to operate. And sometimes the way we operate isn't the right way. And sometimes it doesn't really matter. Sometimes adjusting who you are doesn't really matter. And it's never about being inauthentic. It's always about trying to bring to that relationship something that's going to help the relationship and not hurt the relationship.
Excellent. I love that point. I love the way you articulated it because I've been articulating that point in a very negative way, and I need to change it to the way you just did. Because tell me
more. Like, what do you mean? How are you saying it negatively?
I need you to repeat that because I think I've been saying the same thing, but I've been saying it in a negative. I tell young people that they should just dummy up and do what their boss says, and that is not a very positive way to say that. But
suck it up, Buttercup.
I'm old school. Like when you get to be the boss, then you can do it your way. but you're not the boss.
Yeah.
So you do, and I explained it like that. I explain in my defense that everyone has a boss. Like when you get older, that just because you get older doesn't mean like at some point, for the most part, you're going to have a boss, and that you have to learn the skill. Like especially when they don't want to do something I'm asking them to do. That part of it, they're like, why do I already know this? Why do I have to do this? And I say, I'll tell you why. Because as you get older and go to college and move into jobs, you're going to be asked to do things you don't want to do all the time. And you need to develop the skill of doing that and working through those negative emotions that come along with doing things that you don't want to do with a smile. I said, and I tell them about how the principal wants me to do all these things. I'm like, half the things that I ask you to do is not because I think they're so awesome. It's because Mr. West thinks they're awesome. Who's my boss? And I just do them because he asked me to do them. That's why I do them. And literally
Melanie,
no other reason.
I don't think that's negative at all. I think you're telling people the truth. You know, maybe I say it a little more flowery, but honestly, the subtitle of my book could be just "Shut Up and Do Your Job."
Well, yeah.
There is an element of truth to that. There is an element of you are being paid to do something, and yes, hopefully the relationship will work for you. But sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're being paid to do a certain job, and a lot less carping and complaining, and a lot more kind of strategizing and bringing your best self to that effort is going to help you in your career much more.
Yes. Actually, the engineer I mentioned just entered the room. Angelique Scholl just entered the Facey chat.
The tall drink of water?
Yes, the tall drink of water and all the personality just entered the Facey chat. But yes, that's very true. And that's what I tell them. And I tell them, they're like, you know, when are we going to use this information? When are we going to use that? And I explain to them, you know what it is that you're using. You're using skills that you're going to need. And in college, it's not so much about being smart. It's about dealing with these different personalities that you're going to have to deal with when you get out into the work world. And surviving that successfully. It's more about that than it is about being smart. And working your way through doing this assignment that I'm asking you to do right now, because you don't, even though you don't feel like doing it, is a skill that you're going to need for the rest of your life. So you should probably go ahead and do that. I said, and I told one kid, I said, you know where people are who don't develop that skill? They're in jail. That's where they are. When you, I mean, I'm serious. If you are constantly incompliant to authority figures when they ask you to do something because you don't want to do them, that's where you end up in the pokey. So you need to develop that skill. Listening to authority, doing things that you don't want to do, even though you don't feel like doing them, even though you don't want to do them. It's a part of life. Get over yourself. This is what it's time to do.
And I love, and you know, that's actually, you know, people need to be told the truth sometimes, and that is really the truth. And what you're helping people develop with that message is you're helping them reframe their attitude, right? If you go into the workplace with a me-only attitude, only seeing things from your perspective, getting grumpy when you have to do things you don't want to do, that's not attitude for success. Like there's no career that you are going to be successful unless you're going to be like, all right, let me try that. I'll learn from that. I don't want to do that, but you know what? I don't want to make those copies, but I'm going to make the best copies I can. Because you only grow when you do new things. And sometimes those things you don't like to do, as you say, are really important and you're going to learn. And if you ever do want to be the leader of something, you need to know how to do all those things, right? Because if you're going to manage other people, then you have to manage the whole process. And the other thing about what you said is everybody has a boss. Steve Jobs had a boss. Like the chairman of the board is his. You know, the boards are their boss.
They fired him.
I own my own business. Right, I've owned my own business for 25 years. My bosses are now all of my clients, so I have tons of bosses now. And so I think being able to understand how to work those relationships is really important.
That is an excellent point, and that's what kids don't seem to get, and young people don't seem to get. Like they seem to think that at some point there's going to be this time where they don't have to listen to somebody, where they don't have to do things that they don't want to do. And I'm like, oh, sugar face, that this is called life. It's not good. It doesn't get better. It doesn't go up from here. Like this is what it is.
Well, the other thing that cracks me up about some young people is a lot of them want to be entrepreneurs, which is great. Like I've been entrepreneur now for like 26 years. And a lot of them think that they can get a successful business by working just a little bit, right?
Oh, well,
work a couple hours a day.
I'm going to work, right.
I don't think, so I don't think people who haven't owned their own business, I don't think they understand. Like, I hear so many people say, oh, well, I would love the flexibility of having my own business. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I like the flexibility of maybe working only 6 hours every Saturday instead of 4 hours every Saturday. Like,
the flexibility.
I don't think people realize, you'll never work as hard as when you have your own business or as frequently as many hours. So that's, so that's why you should work hard now when you're young at work, because if you ever want to have your own business, you got to prepare to have that work ethic.
Exactly. One of my students told me she wants to be a business lady when she grows up. I'm going to be a business lady. And I'm like, okay, well, you better find something that you're super excited about, because you're going to be doing it a lot, like often. All day, every day, and putting your heart and soul into it. So you better find something that you super duper enjoy. And she's like, I don't have anything like that. And I said, you do, you just haven't found it yet. I said, so this is what I want you to do for the next few days. The next time you find yourself super duper stoked and excited about something, that's your business. That's what it is. So she's been working on it.
Melanie, that is really great advice, and I think about when I work with young people, I think we do them a disservice sometimes, or I think the baby boomers have done them a little bit of a disservice, where they're, they say the 15-year-olds, follow your passion, follow your passion. Well, a lot of 15-year-olds don't have passion yet, and I think what we need to tell them is what you tell them. Be on the lookout for it. You may not have it yet, but it will come, but it may not come when you're 15, 16, 17, 18, but you want to keep trying things, like you said, and take notice of the things that you try that really make you feel good, because that is going to lead you on the road to finding it. But it doesn't always happen automatically for everybody when you're 18.
Exactly. And they think that working from home means, I sincerely believe that they think that working from home means that they're not working hard. And that is just, simply not true. And I explained to her about this business and the other business that I have, and a friend of mine who's quite the self-made woman and her projects, and talk to her about her and all the work, how hard she's worked to get to where she is. And she's like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, well, let me tell you a little bit about how she got there. And so, and I showed her her Facebook page and how she travels all the time. But I'm like, that didn't happen overnight. When she was your age, she was working 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, making it happen. Now that she's done that for 25 years, now she can travel and do philanthropic things and, go on fabulous vacations. But didn't happen overnight.
No, it didn't. No, it doesn't. And, I also always tell the young people, who want to get promoted, you want to get promoted? That's great. Here's what you got to do. First of all, you've got to bring your A game to work every single day, right? You've got to get big results. Two, you've got to have that can-do attitude. Like, I can do that. I can do that. Three, you've got to take the jobs that no one else wants to do and do them really well. And four, and most importantly, you have to work harder than the person sitting next to you. Like, I get so frustrated when I have people who are like, the 9-to-5ers, and they get their line on 9:15, they leave by 5, and then they complain they don't get a promotion when the person sitting next to them is staying to 7 o'clock every night. Like, that's who gets noticed in the business world. Is it fair? Maybe, maybe not. Is it right? Maybe, maybe not. But it's a simple formula. You want to get promoted, then you got to show your boss that you are putting the extra effort in over the other people next to you.
I love this issue of fairness, as if that's relevant to like anything.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, I'm 5'2". I'm 5'2", and my friend Angelique is like, I don't know, 5'11", something like that. If life were fair, this would not be the case. Okay? So there's no such animal as that. Like, just get rid of that. It's irrelevant whether or not it's fair. Yeah. What are you talking about?
And, I know, and that people get so caught up in that, and that's, when I talk about managing up to people and we talk about the different kinds of bosses, I hear so many times from people, well, that's not fair. Well, that's not right. Well, my boss should do this. My boss needs to do that. It's my boss's job to do this. That's not fair. That's not right. And I say, you know what? So what? You're right. You know what? You're right. It's not fair. You're right. It's not right. You're right. Your boss should do that. But guess what, Buttercup? Your boss isn't doing that.
Exactly.
So what are you going to do? Are you going to become a career victim and just sit there and get like shrouded in a cloud of bitterness and watch your career die? Or are you going to look at that boss and figure out, here's what my boss needs. Here's how he or she operates. Here's what I'm going to do so that I can be successful. They can be successful, and the organization can be successful. The minute we start complaining and going to should, it's not fair, we have completely disempowered ourselves.
Absolutely.
And, it's the old, like Eckhart Tolle says, like when you're faced with any difficult situation, you have three choices. You can change the situation, you can accept the situation, or you can leave the situation. The choice you cannot make is to sit there and become a victim. So when people have difficult bosses, you can't change who they are. You can only change how you deal with that. Or you leave and you find an opportunity that works better for you. I get so frustrated with people who are career victims.
Indeed. I was just about to, I think you answered the next question I was going to ask you is how you avoid letting it affect your work, because it certainly can affect your work. I stopped teaching for about a year because I was letting the apathy of the parents and the kids and, quite frankly, other teachers not working as hard. I was letting all of that affect who I was as a teacher, is what I found out. And that's why I was so miserable, because I wasn't applying my rule for life into my rule for my profession, which my rule for life is never let a person change who you are. Like, even if they're a complete bleep, you don't become that person just because they did. You still maintain your standards. I love that. You still maintain that. Whoever it is that you are, whoever it is that you desire to be, those choices, you maintain who you are. But I had not applied that same principle to my teaching. And that's where I made the mistake. I started becoming just as apathetic as the kids and the parents. And just as apathetic as the teachers around me. I knew I could pass my evaluations with flying colors with very little effort, even though it was eating my soul. And the reason why I was eating my soul is because I knew I sucked. And I was still getting good scores, knowing full well that I was sucking. And that does not work. That does not work for
my spirit. What did you do to get yourself out of that? Like, you got yourself in a little trap there, a little like self-pity trap or whatever, but you got yourself out. What did you say to yourself? What did you do to get you out of that, like, that vicious circle?
This is going to probably sound really strange and weird to some people who are not believers, but I honestly think that God led me to that conclusion. I think prayer, daily prayer, gratitude, all that kind of thing led me to that epiphany one day. That was
beautiful.
That was what it was. That one day it popped in my head that this is what the problem had been. That I had been compromised. My person had been compromised. And I let it compromise who I was as a person had changed in the classroom. And I should not have allowed that. I don't allow it in social media. I don't allow it in my personal life. I should not have allowed it in the classroom. And
I love that.
I think God led me to that. So.
And what I love about that is whether it comes from your belief, whether it comes from God, what it did is it shifted your perspective, right? You shifted your perspective. You came to a realization, and you empowered yourself to say, like, I have choices, right? And I don't have to let this impact who I am. I can work the situation or leave the situation or accept the situation and be who I am and still be successful. I just think that is beautiful, and that is a great message. And I think what I see a lot of, I want to talk for a minute about the truly toxic bosses.
Please.
Because, you're going to have difficult bosses, you're going to have pain in the butt bosses, you're going to have annoying bosses. But every now and then, you're really going to, if you work long enough, you may find yourself working for what I call a truly toxic boss, a boss who, is emotionally abusive, maybe physically abusive, a boss that demeans you, a boss that abases you, bullies you. I call them the screaming tyrant, psycho, bully, narcissist.
Yeah.
And when you have a boss, right, when you have a boss like that, you need to take notice because something like 75% of Americans have worked for a mildly or a highly toxic boss. And the research around toxic bosses is really frightening. People that work for toxic bosses, first of all, they work for them longer because oftentimes you find toxic bosses in high-meaning careers, so they're in there longer. You become physically and emotionally sicker. Studies have shown that it raises your risk of heart attack and stroke by over 60%, and that when you leave a toxic boss, it can take up to 2 years, Melanie, 2 years to recover. It's like PTSD. It is bad. So I do want people to be on the lookout for if you're working for a toxic boss, there is no managing up. All you can do is protect yourself until you get out, and you have to get out because your life and your health depend on it.
And that person, at least it's been my experience, will do everything in their power to keep you. They will not let you go. My very first real boss was like that, would make me cry. I was having panic attacks. I was in my 20s, and it was ridiculous. And he would scream at me and literally buy me a gift or flowers or candy or something the next day. Like, have me in the bathroom, like, just it curled in a ball. Yes. And then, when I tried to leave, gave me a $5,000 raise the first time. Now, when you're 23, 24, $5,000 is a lot of money. And then, that same year, gave me another $5,000 as a bonus. So I wouldn't leave. And I didn't. The first time I tried to leave. The first time I tried to leave, I didn't. The second time, a promotion and money. And I said, no, thank you.
Good for you.
I'm out.
Good for you, girl. Good for you. Because a lot of people, so what happens when we work, good for you, but you were young. I mean, and by the way, most people of any age would have stayed too if they got those things. Because we think a couple things. One, we think, well, you know what, maybe that person, someone's like an abusive spouse, right? Maybe that person is maybe that'll be the last time they yell at me, or maybe they'll get better, or maybe things will turn around, or maybe I'm just being insensitive. Like, we hope things get better. The second reason why we put up with that is we think, well, I put so much time in this organization, like, I don't want to lose what I've gained, right? I've got a good reputation. So we get all caught up in what's called the sunk cost. And thirdly, a lot of people think someone in the organization is going to save them. Oh, HR is going to come in and save me. Oh, the owner is. But the truth is, no one's going to come save you, because usually the toxic people are either the owners, the leaders, or they're high performers and they're bringing in a lot of money. And so the organizations let these people stay in place, and it is just a terrible, terrible situation. So you really do have to do what you did, and you have to, like Roa said at some point, put on your big girl pants and be like, enough of this. I don't deserve this. I deserve to spend my working hours with someone who finds me valuable and where I am valued.
Indeed. And it is very hard. But the second time I said, yeah, I appreciate that, but I gotta go. But the only thing I do regret, right? The only thing I regret now is not having the courage to explain to him that the way he was treating me was wrong. Like, if I had that whole situation to do over again, before I left, when I did the exit interview, if I were the person that I am now, I would have explained to him that my treatment, that the way he treated me was wrong. And that was why I was leaving. And I didn't do that. I just said it was a, better opportunity, blah, blah. But,
well, the truth is, if you had told him that, he would not have believed it anyway. Like, he may not have cared. I actually did that once, Melanie. The last, real official boss I had was a horrible, screaming jerk. He was an elected official in Washington, D.C., and was just awful, just screamed and was awful. And that's why I decided I was going to leave, because I couldn't take it anymore. And that's when I opened up the bar with my sister, the Swiddle Lounge.
Nice.
And as I was leaving, I thought, I'm going to put on my big girl pants. I'm going to tell him exactly why I'm leaving. And I did. And he looked at me and said, he completely ignored it. He looked at me and said, well, you're going to fail at your business, and don't come calling me because I'm not going to give you a job. Like, God. Okay, fine. See ya.
You bring about a very good point, because people like that are not like that because they're introspective and deep thinkers. You know what I mean? Because
Exactly.
like if they were, then they probably wouldn't treat people like that to begin with. So that's so you bring about that probably would have been a complete waste of some very good time.
Yeah, because you're right. Anyone that's going to treat people so poorly. I'm not saying to your listeners, I'm not saying don't tell them the truth. You should, of course, if you can, but don't expect anyone to change from it, because people who treat people that poorly aren't introspective. They don't care. And it may not do any good, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't tell them. But don't expect them to have any miracles either.
Well, that's true.
And same with HR.
As good
and the
people,
same with HR. And that's why I want to really caution people if they work for a large organization, that before you go and really rat out a toxic boss, you want to make sure that you have an HR department that actually cares. Because most of what HR departments are there for are to protect the organization from lawsuits. And so if you're going to be a whistleblower, and I've talked to a lot of whistleblowers lately, it's a crapshoot of whether or not they're going to do anything for you. And you need to be prepared to basically get fired or to leave your job, because a lot of organizations, and of course we've seen this all with the Me Too, right? A lot of organizations do not want to hear that news about their high performers. So I really want people to be very careful. Being a whistleblower is the right thing to do, but be prepared to have some backlash on you.
That's true. How do you feel about? So I was given this advice by a mentor a while ago, and I've put it into practice. It's been working so far. How do you feel about, in that situation, getting your boss to write you a recommendation letter mid-career, before there's been any drama, but while you're doing good, or perhaps after coming off of a very good project or something like that, just having them write a letter that's good for your file, or for a volunteer organization or something like that. Just getting your boss to put something good about you in writing. You know what I mean?
I think that's I love that, Melanie. More people should do that on a regular basis anyway. So right. I think that would be that's a great thing to do. And that really comes around about you being a self-advocate for your own career, right? And I think women we're not very good at that, right? Women tend not to want to advocate for our own career. We tend to think the world's a meritocracy, ha, ha, ha. Right? If we just are really good at our job, someone's going to notice, right? And that's not true. So I really, really like that. Whether or not your boss is a great boss or a crappy boss, that's a great strategy that everybody should be thinking about all the time. Getting those recommendation letters, really getting people to recognize what you're good at when you do a good job. It's called a little bit of shameless self-promotion, and I think that's a great strategy anytime for any kind of boss.
Indeed. You just say something like, I'd love to add it to my portfolio, or something, anything like that. Or, I'm going for this volunteer organization. I'd love for you to write a letter of recommendation for that, and you can legitimately be volunteering for something. But the bottom line is that you're getting somebody in authority to say something positive about you, and it's kind of like a little insurance policy if things go bad later on.
I love it.
Yeah, it's been handy dandy up there. It's been handy dandy. I had something go bad at one job, and the principal literally had written me a recommendation letter 3 months before. But he found out about my political affiliation, and he was very unhappy. He made some assumptions based on my skin color and my vocation that were not correct.
So I'm going to assume that he thought you were a lefty liberal, and you're not.
That is correct. That's correct. And
then did he try to liberal shame you?
He did. And your political affiliation is not a protected class, so you can be bullied politically at your job. You can be bullied. Oh, absolutely. You can be bullied for being a Republican. I'm very seriously thinking about changing my affiliation to Christian conservative to add a religious component, which I am. I'm just not that officially as a voter. But Yeah, it's not, your political affiliation is not a protected class. So you can be fired due to your political affiliation. I mean, it's not protected. It's not.
Even if you work for a government institution.
If you work for
education, a government institution.
If you work for a public school and your boss marches up to you and says, "How can you be a teacher and be a Republican?" That is perfectly legal. It happened.
That's crazy. I had no idea.
And I told him that I was politically active, to be fair, because I think that year I was running for local office. Now, did I know that he would probably make some assumptions based on my skin color and the fact that I was a female and the fact that I was a teacher? Sure, I did. I did not volunteer that I was a Republican. Did I assume his bias? Yeah, I did. And was I right? Yes, I was. Now, later on, when he found out that I was a card-carrying Republican with a whole Facebook page and a campaign and worked on other people's campaigns and worked on, it was in the newspaper and all kinds of stuff like that because of the stuff that I do in the Republican Party, he was very unhappy. He felt like he got a Trojan horse, apparently.
I'm sorry. I think that's so funny.
So he was very upset.
I mean, it's sad too, but it's kind of funny because you're right. You just watched that assumption train wreck happen, didn't you? Just watched him. That's kind of funny.
But he had already written the recommendation letter for me to become a professor. That was my first year as a professor. He had already written it. But then, because I was a fabulous teacher when he evaluated me that first time before he knew I was a Republican. And then by the end of the year, I apparently started sucking, like in a month and a half. I just changed the whole game and was terrible.
Wow.
Yeah, and he put all kinds of like crazy stuff, like crazy benchmarks that I had to meet that weren't really measurable, like you need to come to more school events, like crazy stuff. Yeah, it was insane.
And so I'm assuming you left that job, right?
I did.
Yeah, so that's a perfect. You left it, right? That's a perfect example of there was probably nothing you could do short of becoming a lefty liberal that was gonna make that person be invested in you, that you could be successful with that person. So when you have a situation like that, right? It wasn't right. It's not fair, but you did what was right for you, and you decided like this isn't working for me. It's never going to work for me because I am not willing to become what he wants me to become to work for him. So you make the choice to leave. And that is why I'm so proud of you for doing that, because that's what we have to do. We have to take control of our own experience.
And it was literally the conversation that we had at my end of the year meeting, at the evaluation meeting. He wanted me to state, literally said these words in my heart, that I believed in this very, very left-wing grading policy that he had. I said, I'll follow the policy because I'm an employee and you're my boss, and, in my head, and I'm dummying up. So I'm going to do what you say. And he said, no, I need you to believe in your heart that this is the right thing to do. And I was like, yeah, not even kidding. And I said, yeah, no, sorry, not for like 50 grand. My heart?
Oh my.
Like, do you know what Jesus did?
Oh my God.
That is what he said.
Oh my God.
Not even making it up. So I quit.
You did the right thing. You did the right thing.
Yeah, there was because I was not going to win. And I also was not going to lie about the way I felt about that policy. I was going to follow it. Yeah. I was going to do my job, but I wasn't going to be dishonest about the way I felt about it. Said, Booker T. Washington was a former slave who educated himself on the dirt floor. Don't tell me that a kid who's a minority can't make the grade. I don't want to hear that. You're talking to the wrong person. Yeah. You can feed that stuff somewhere else. So me and my principal had to break up. But
yeah. But you did it, and I think when you're faced with something like that, I want people to know it's okay to quit. There's no shame in quitting. You just have to decide whether, some of us, whatever your situation is, whether you need to find another job before you quit, whether you're willing to quit and then find another job. But I hate it when I hear people say, well, I can't quit, there's no other opportunity. Well, I don't know if that's true or not, right? So you have to really check that out. But you're never, your soul would have been crushed. You would have been unhappy if you had stayed there, and they like it would not have worked, and you did the right thing. And look at what that brought you. Like when you put yourself to the best use of yourself, that's when you're going to be more successful. So good for you. And I am so sorry that you had to have a boss like that. That's terrible.
That's a terrible boss. Where can people reach out to you and avail themselves of your services? And please tell the audience, because I have a lot of friends in DC, where your nightclub is.
Well, I don't have it anymore, girl. I'm done with that. It was in Adams Morgan, and neither of the places exist anymore. It was in the 90s and the 2000s. Toledo Lounge and Crush, but it was really a fun time. Anyway, people can find me. You can follow me on Twitter at Mary Abbajay. You can find me on LinkedIn at Mary Abbajay. You can find me at Instagram, if you can see the theme here, at Mary Abbajay. Or you can find the book, Managing Up. You can buy the book on Amazon. You can come to the website of the book, managingupthebook.com, and you can check out the services of my company, and that is Careerstonegroup.com.
Awesome. And all of those links will be in the podcast when I post it on iTunes and any other platform where you can get podcasts. All of the links to all of her websites will definitely be there. If you are listening to this on SHR Media or any other Audible platform and you want to know where to get the links to all of her information, that is where they will be in electronic format. Thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm a minute over, but I definitely wanted to thank you. I wanted to thank my audience for being here on SHR Media. I want to thank all of my sponsors, the Tax Mama, aka Eva Rosenberg. Thank you so much, Robert Houston from creditrepair.biz, and the one and only John Campbell at Biz Social Personal Touch. Thank you all so much. Thank you all for listening. Thank you guys in the Facey chat for being so interactive. Thank you, Mike Fitzpatrick, for a wonderful first hour, and thank you, Mary Abbajay. You did a fantastic job. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money. Have a fantastic weekend.